wonderful saying. My good friends know all my stories. My best friend helped me write it. Gio was of help in writing many, many stories. Many of you will remember many of these things. The first thing I want to remember is a trip in 1975 to Aspen. We spent the week at Snowmass, skiing Aspen Highlands, Ajax, Aspen Highlands, and Snowmass, and had a wonderful time. Then we drove to Grand Junction and took a train from Grand Junction to Salt Lake City because we were going to meet Camilla and Dick Humphreys at Alta and spend a week there, which we did. That train ride was a wonderful memory. Pullman cars, dining cars, observation cars going through those Rocky Mountains. It was spectacular. A couple of years after that, Dick Humphreys and Gio and I flew to Calgary and tried our hand at heli skiing at a place called Bobby Burns. We weren't pioneers, but back then it was skinny skis, and we were in a double wide trailer, so it wasn't absolutely mudless, but the skiing was terrific, and we have some great memories of that. In 2019, John, Lynn, and Sally and I flew again to Salt Lake City, this time to go to 5 national parks in southern Utah. I got great credit from Lynn for finding the Moab Garage for our first lunch. John was an incredible leader in Cooley Dickinson as chief of surgery, as president of medical staff, and a trustee for many years. What my role or how John influenced me in that time was about mid-70s, I was invited to join the hospital board. I didn't know anything about hospital governance, so of course I went to John and I said, Gio, what should I do? Well, he convinced me that I should say yes, and I did join the hospital board. But John went one step further. He felt that it was important that I understand how an OR functioned. And so he cleared the path for me to observe a surgery one day. And what I saw was how the doctors interacted, how John, as the chief surgeon, was assisted with his assistant, how the nurses interacted. That whole team just worked together. And I could generalize, and I did, and think if the hospital's going to work well, all the pieces have got to work just exactly the way Gio showed me in that operation. As you might imagine, we call Gio every other day, it seemed, when a family emergency or issue would arrive. One thing that was a very serious matter, when she was 5 years old, our daughter Sarah had a cerebral hemorrhage. She's fine now, but she wasn't so fine at that time. I was up in Rutland, Vermont at one of our Coca-Cola plants, and Sally observed Sarah was not responsive and took her to the hospital, and of course immediately called John. John detected what Sarah had was not within the capacity of Cooley Dickinson to treat. So he called around to various hospitals and found a neurosurgeon who he had conference with in Springfield at Bay State. So he called the ambulance. They loaded Sarah in the ambulance, and Gio got in the ambulance with Sarah. If you don't think that people turned to when they showed up at Springfield Bay State Hospital with Sarah and Gio, you'd be mistaken. We had made a wonderful decision when COVID was raging. The Parsons and the Griggs said, we're going to get together every Wednesday night for dinner. We formed a little pod, and if we ever had any interaction with anybody other than the 4 of us, we would test before we'd have dinner together. And back then, the restaurants were delivering, then came DoorDash. And lately, we would even go out to dinner occasionally, but we had this absolute and violent Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, we'd show up at John and Lynn's house, or they'd show up at our house. We'd have a glass of wine and a martini and dinner. That continues. And the thing that I think had a little divine intervention here, years ago, the Parsons and the Grinnells and the Griggs used to get together during the Christmas holidays for family dinner with all the kids and everything. So it was just a terrific experience. We were with Tim during the fall, and Tim said, we ought to have one of those holiday dinners again. Well, we said, we'll do that. Saturday after Thanksgiving, we'll indeed do that. Well, John and Tim went all out on the wine. It was a wonderful idea. And John came with his green bean casserole. We got a couple of tenderloins, and we had just the most wonderful time. When John and Lynn decided to leave around 10 o'clock, I walked them to the door, of course, and gave John a huge hug and said, "See you Wednesday, Gio." Trey Parsons is John's nephew, and I'd like to call him up now.